Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It's the Jade Gemini. Tonight I'm excited to go ahead and bring you a video in a new series that I've been thinking about for a while. This series is called Forgotten G's. And essentially what this is going to be is the beloved G-Shock models, maybe some of the ones that aren't as popular, go ahead and show those to the forefront and do the normal format of that I like to do so much of, what I like, what I love, what I dislike, and what I hate, to fully bring you up to speed about a certain model and go ahead and introduce it to you and maybe look back through some history as well. So, without further ado, let's go and get started. Today, we are talking about my favorite G-Shock model that I've owned. This is the GW-5900. Before we go ahead and get over with this watch though, talk about all those things, let's go ahead and get some size comparisons and design comparisons out of the way with two of the most popular G's I would probably say that are out there. The original G Square. This is the predecessor of the high-tech DW or GW-5000. This is the GW-M5610, the solar multi-band 6 version. So you can see side by side, which we'll talk about some design philosophies, but we're just going over the size comparison. Here's overall thickness, as well as notice the thickness of the actual band here as well, and the clasp. So overall, you can see that this watch is just a little bit bigger in overall proportions, and definitely a lot thicker and chunkier than the original. Moving on to, of course, the new boy. This represents the GA-2100, or in this is the GA-B-2100, the solar and Bluetooth model. Overall in size, this comes in a little bit more competitive, with this having these squared shoulders to house the round crystal. But overall, you can still see it has a thinner watch strap and a thinner overall profile. So that's just some of the size comparisons out of the way. Let's go ahead and jump right in. So the DW-5610. Well, this watch, firstly, is really important to me. And the reason why I bought it is because this is my birth year designed G-Shock. I was actually born in 1992. And back in 1992, coming off the heels of the 83 G-Shock original square, and tinkered around with some different designs, entering the new era, right? The new century. Decade. Sorry. Anyways, entering the 10 years, sorry, caffeine from the day is well worn off. But entering that, they had to try their hand to be fresh at some new designs. And definitely is the case here with the 5900. So this was the first G-Shock ever to go ahead and introduce this cyclops design, which actually ended up getting baked down into more popular designs. Probably other than this, and before this came out, easily the second most popular design that G-Shock has ever made is the brother of this, which has kind of taken all of its little pieces and put it together and packaged it into a, popular package. And of course, I'm talking about the DW-6900, the one that the John Mayer version has come in, the one that the Neon Genesis Evangelion series come in, one of my favorite, shows from when I was a kid. Ray's Engineering Wheels, being a part of that Gran Turismo generation, that sort of thing. HKS, I think. There's just an infinite amount. The Wu-Tang, that they just came out that says cash rules everything around me. So, I mean, it is just, I think it competes toe-to-toe or maybe even beats in some way probably toe-to-toe because there's so many variants of the square as well, but it is definitely the second most popular design. Before this comes out and gotten all the hype, it has a longer record. So the 5900 doesn't necessarily get as many customizations and models. So this was more of I think a foreground test bed. And then they sort of developed more and changed, and just the popularity became of the 6900. However, there are things that I like a lot more about this, and the reason why it is my favorite over that design. So the first one comes into the sort of bread and butter DNA of the square. And you can see what they've tried to also do with the Casio as well, when going ahead and designing it as a modern watch back off of this. So the first thing that you can see here is that you get this sort of semi-rounded, but also you get this semi-squared design, which is really, really cool. Now, one unique thing about this watch is that it actually has a round crystal like the 5900. The 2100, my bad. So if you look down in here, you can see there's a gap right here and a gap right here. And essentially there's a right there as well. There is a round crystal module on the back of this, standard stamp style. But instead of it being squared like this module in here, it is a round crystal. And then they put the dome over here, the protective, bezel, the rubber bezel. So with this, I found a couple interesting things from this. One, it has this offset design of the time. Here's the whole entire crystal of the watch, the face, but this is the time. While with this, although it's slightly offset, all the information is right here on the watch. Now, with later designs, they sort of, this tells the time in the middle, and then you just have the, complications over there, the date and such. But with this watch, they've kind of done things differently, and the first thing that I really, really like about this watch is the module that they've put in this thing. So, as you can see, you have on the front here the time, it's PM. You also have Wednesday, the 12th. So it's kind of like on a Seiko or something like that, where you have the day-date function right there on the side. Both together, you have that. Now, not that that's necessarily a different thing. Like this has Wednesday, the month, and the date. But like, for example, on this, you don't get that. You either get the, the month and then the date, or you get the day separately, which I wish those two things were the same, or you get the time or a reminder, right? So it's nice looking at this design to go ahead and see that this is an option. Also, you can see what's going on here with the cyclops. You have 5 seconds counting up, 5 seconds counting up in a total of 10. And as this one goes away and empties, this one will then start to empty, and then it will restart over. So this is something that you can kind of notice on the 6900 as well, but they're just side by side essentially. And in the middle, you've got this different color of the different mute, alarm, signal, so on and so forth. So getting into the actual watch itself, you have some different features. The first thing that you have, just kind of going over all the buttons, pretty simple. You can check your time zone with this button right here. Kind of an interesting feature, I think. Not really quite sure, unless maybe if you go into the settings of the watch and you moved into a different time zone. Yeah, see? You can use this kind of like a GMT, which is cool. So you go here, and you could increase if you changed your world time, and at least your local time will then be that. So instead of having to set the watch hour and then minutes, like some of the older, more rudimentary modules, like the one that comes in the original 6900 or the John Mayer 6900 that I got and got rid of. So this is a nice added feature. More so, you just get customizations with the, the day, the date, the year, things like that, which is nice. Moving into the actual complications next, you have a world time, which is nice because the John Mayer did not. It felt more like an F91W and less like something like this that has all the different options. So you get, an actual GMT here, Tokyo. I like to always scroll through when I'm at work and check what time it is, maybe in like London, if I need to look up something like WatchGecko to see if their customer service is awake or asleep, or if I need to check something from like Singapore, for example, or something like that, if I'm going to be dealing with, some watch companies over there or something like that. So I just like to look ahead where people are in Hong Kong or Bangkok or Singapore, or whatever. So that's a cool feature that it has that. Of course, it has a stopwatch, and you get a microseconds here, and then a count up all the way to 60 minutes. So pretty simple there. Next, you get a timer that you can go in and adjust down. This timer, I believe, just adjusts down to the minute. So you can't do it, you can't do it to the seconds, which I know is something that is a little bit more customizable in some modules. This one is a little bit more rudimentary in that one way, if that's important to you. Then you have your 5 alarms and your signal, and then you're back to the home screen. So it's kind of refreshing because it is simple, but it has everything that, makes a G-Shock, all those cool complications, but nothing like super fancy like parameters or anything like that. Again, this was a model that was made in 92, and not that there weren't fancier models like that, but, this was supposed to be more like a core model or something like that, not even having solar or multiband on this particular one. That does lead me to the next thing, is that it's kind of nice about this watch is it's pretty simple, straightforward. It's kind of refreshing to not have to worry about like solar and charging. I know this, I was fighting to get it out of medium for a long time, and you have to like wear it like for a week before it gets too high. This, on the other hand, because it doesn't have hands, always stays on high, even if it's been in the drawer for 3 months. But although I love Casio Solar, right, the simple fact of this watch, just having batteries that you can easily replace is kind of a refreshing and kind of an eye-opening thing where it's like, oh, I don't have to only buy Solar G-Shocks to enjoy them, the fear of the battery going out, because it's kind of nice that I can just pick it up if it's been in the dark for, a couple weeks and know that it's just going to be ticking away at the battery. So kind of cool with that. Now, design-wise, I absolutely love this for multiple reasons. I think it encapsulates an era, right? I think it encapsulates the bloodline perfectly, and that's why I think it is such a forgotten G that deserves to be talked about, because you can tell with this, you get the sort of rugged shouldering here, like the squares, but it's just a little bit more rounded out and a little bit bigger, adding to the sort of fun and the flair that the crystal and what's underneath the crystal has to present to you. You do have these sort of flat plateaus, kind of like this right here, which is a really nice nod taking some of this DNA, but it is definitely its own thing being molded in. I also like these steel rivets they put in exercise, making it look really tough, but I don't think it's overdone like some of the later models that they came out with Allen head wrenches and everything like that. It's just a nice little pip of touch, changes the texture, the light, the reflectivity of the watch itself. You also have a similar color screen with the red and the grays here, or the whitish grays. Just nice to go ahead and see. Also, instead of having it smaller where it's adjust and mode and things like that, it's much bigger and easier to see right on the outside with bright red. Now, I'd probably say the biggest Marmite thing with this design is the big G-Shock font at the bottom. It definitely stands out, and while this is more balanced, this is just like G-Shock, right? Just right up front, ridiculous. And And of course, this is a little bit more subdued being gray, but you get the picture here. That might be something that is off-putting and a little bit to me as well when I first got it, but I've grown to like it. The other thing that I really, really love is that you have these buttons that actually come out of the case. They are guarded by these guards that are built in, if you can't see. There's like a lip up here, and then of course this shoulder, same thing here and here. So it protects it against accidentally being activated, kind of like what has happened here, but a little bit more extreme. But instead of being recessed, and on this model it's a little easier, but especially on, like I was talking about, the John Mayer 6900 and some of the squares that are not, the newer module versions, they have like recessed buttons that are really hard. This is just really easy, long throw on every single one, and you can touch it, right? So that's really nice. Also has a nice, like any of them, right? Has a nice backlit LED of that beautiful aqua of that era, instead of this ridiculous super bright white blue that hurts your eyes and is too bright in the middle of the night. So that's a nice little touch that they're still going to go ahead and have that and carry over. The other thing is you start getting little things like these cuts here from the original, these vents. You can also see the same thing was replicated here, pulling over from that DNA, as well as the squiggle and the simple, band here with the sort of rivet holes, right? All of this was taken from the original. And so this, again, just being, about 9 years after the Square was born, was basically just juiced up a little bit. You have this beefier area here, which is more sturdy and, almost kind of has this like Air Max 90 feel, where it's sort of beefy and chunky in certain ways, but it's still all of that design in spades of the original. The vents here, like I said, these swollen bits right here that hark back, the overall shape, it definitely just took this and put it on another level and, adapted and changed some things. The one thing that I really, really love, and it just sort of gives the overall vibe of that sort of era, the 90s, everything like that, it's just sort of this like the hex grid pattern on the dial. So if you can't see this here, you have really cool blue font right here that sort of breaks everything up, and it sort of ties in with these aqua greenish subdials, and then this sort of amber colored middle cyclops as well. And then you just have the standard right here. It's not the golden that you see on some of the G-Shocks, it's just the silver, right? The standard, just like this. And so what this does is it gives this sort of cockpit Top Gun vibe, right? The way that this looks. Of course, the Mission Impossible is, a watch as well from this era that gets a lot more love as sort of a forgotten G. But this, I think, is just cool, having this sort of like mixture of Blade Runner, this almost like Neo Tokyo vibe, going back to like Neon Genesis Evangelion, or other animes of the time, and other just shows, the sort of vibe that you end up getting of these hexagons and these like markers around. It just feels like I am in the cockpit and this is all my information. I have a joystick right here, and above is the screen, or is the window out of the jet, and it just feels so cool. The way everything's displayed and sunk in and beveled, it's just awesome. I absolutely love looking at this thing, and it just gives a smile every single time with the differences in colors and the way that matte is pretty simple, but yet it still plays with the light. I think all these different things, the evolution of the design, keeping everything intact, but being a little bit more beefy, a little bit more tough, is really, really fun. But of course, it still has that G-Shock lightness and a beautiful wearability as well on the wrist. So definitely is more bold than the other models, the way that they look. This is a little bit more small, a little bit more like you mount it on and it disappears. Well, this is a little bigger and it even sort of like hovers off the wrist. So if you've worn something like the 6900, it's big like this as well. But the main problem is it yaws back and forth with so much room here and here. While this has a shorter lug to lug instead of being round like that, because it's got this more squared design here, I feel it really hugs to the wrist, much like this does, where it mounts on, doesn't move around, and it's really comfortable. Even though it is thicker, it wears really, really well. Now, the other thing that I do like about this watch a lot is the overall build quality, maybe because of the round crystal or the case or whatever, is top notch on this. When you look at this, when you actuate the buttons or anything on this classic, you can see the case is morphing around. It's sort of oblong and stretching out, right? Push a button and it just moves. I've been spoiled by pressing and holding to get. With this is another thing that is, with this modern watch that I'm kind of, not loving. It's my biggest qualm about the 2100 is just the bezel is like got gap up here but not down here and over here, and then you can pull on this really easily, right? And then it's like curved here but then it's flat here. It's just like not tight. It's like very loosey-goosey, right? And you could say, well, that's so it has give with the shock, and I'm sure that's fine. I mean, this is not made to be a beauty piece, right? It's made to be a G-Shock, both of these, same as this. But the difference is that this feels really, really solid. This feels like it has no movement. When it actuates, squeeze here and here as well, it's really solid. The only time is if you start squeezing and kind of pulling up, you can see it move around, but if you even push down here, everything just feels tight. This is like snug down and, into the strap. And especially with this being bold, it just has this like, clamped on feeling that everything's really tight and really tough and strong and masculine. Instead of some of these, though, which, again, just feel a little bit more rubbery, this feels a little bit more bulky and tough, ready to take a beating. And so it just adds to that whole entire, again, tough, future world, technology, whatever, gonna survive the deserts of Blade Runner. I don't know. It just feels tough. It feels cool. And it feels quality is what I'm trying to say. And with all the little attention to details, the differences, the bold fonts, it's sort of in your face, but at the same time, it's, it's sort of classic and retro. It's not trying to be too much. And I think for that, it's a classic that is beautiful, but unfortunately, it's beautifully forgotten. And it's just a joy to wear. It's lightweight, like I was saying, even though it is big and bulky. It's sort of, in a lack of a better term, gives me that sort of same feeling and vibe that one of my favorite watches of all time, the Seiko Turtle, does, where it wears really well, but it feels big, it feels tough, it makes you feel like powerful and strong, Must be what Ben 10 feels like when he wears, or something like that, right? It just feels really, really cool. But at the same time, it's not inconvenient, it's not constantly bumping into things, it doesn't look tacky in that sort of way. And so, for that, that's why it is my favorite. So, this is the first installment of the Forgotten G, just sort of taking you over a little bit more casual. This isn't necessarily like a full-on review, right? Just sort of going over some of its features overall, what I like, what I dislike. Not exactly the same format, just something a little bit more casual, like talking to a friend about one of his favorite watches. So, I hope you did end up liking this video. If you did, please go ahead and give it a like, as well as subscribe, and comment how you found this style video that was a little bit more casual, instead of so like, I like this, I love this, I don't like this, and I hate this, just to kind of change things up. Also, I am hoping to get other models, and I already have my eye on some that are from the sort of era as well, that have been well forgotten, maybe even more so than this amazing guy right here. And tell me what your thoughts are about the 5900. I love it so much because of the, unique time, the placement, the way the dials look, the different colors, again, that cockpit vibe. Tell me if you like that. Do you hate that? Do you hate this? Does that bother you at all? Just different thing like that. or maybe tell me about some models that you think I should look at reviewing next. Of course, I can't thank you enough for taking time to go ahead and watch this video, as there is so many other content creators you could be taking a look at. You decided to click on my little video as well. I would like it if you liked the video, if you did like it, of course, and subscribe, as it does help the channel, which is just crazy. I have to thank you guys as well. We're closer to 2,000 than we are to 1,000. For a dummy like me, that's just crazy that anybody would want to watch that. So I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to reach, and watch these things and subscribe. I hope everybody has a great rest of your week and look forward for more content to come. You take care. Peace.